name's Sam Stites. I'm the current travel and outdoors editor with Portland Monthly. I was Emerald editor 2013, 2014. Before that, I was the investigations editor in my junior year. I was a news editor and reporter my sophomore year, and news reporter my freshman year.
Gotcha. Kind of every possible little position you could have had.
Yeah, I made a lot of stops in different areas and took some photos, did some video as well. It was
Nice.
definitely a time where people were encouraged to do many things and try their hand at a lot of different mediums because, when you get out into the real world, as they say, you're expected to do a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then would you remind me what years you were at the Emerald?
Yeah, from 2011 to 2014. Well, I guess technically 2015. I had to come back for a little victory lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember what sparked your interest or how you found out about the Emerald in the first place?
Yeah, actually, I remember exactly the moment. I was talking to my neighbor, Thomas Kyle Millward, and he was a copy editor at the time. He was a junior, or he might have been a senior, but he was like really involved. He was almost like a managing editor because of how he like would put the paper. This was back when it was a daily paper still, so he was like putting the paper to bed every night, and he'd come back and we'd be like hanging out, and he'd talk to me about what the day's news was or things like that, and I was just so interested. And I'd always been kind of a good writer and was interested in journalism. In high school, I did like the announcements. Like I went to Park Rose High School in Northeast Portland, and I say that because I'm very proud because 2 years before me was Tyree Harris, who was also from Park Rose. So two Park Rose boys who made it out and went and did something really cool. Um, so Thomas would just tell me about all the things going on at the Emerald and all the news happening on campus, and I was just fascinated. So he was like, "Why don't you come and talk to the news editor Colton Totland, and we'll get you an assignment." And my first assignment was Holy Fest, which was a really fun one because everyone's just really. It was held between the night library and the education building, or no, the music building, education building, and in that like grassy area. And everyone was just like super stoked and wanted to talk. So it was like a very easy intro to journalism because it was just like it was a super like happy moment and everyone was stoked to be there. So I soon I was brought on staff a couple months later and ended up being the higher education reporter, and that was a really interesting time too because the at that time Oregon didn't have its own board. It was still part of the Oregon State School Board or like university board system, and they were firing the president of UBO. So the whole campus community was up in arms. He had been like told that there was a pay freeze and he couldn't give professors any raises, and he did it anyway to keep a bunch of people. And so everyone was like behind him, and it was kind of they called him the hat because he always wore this like top hat. If you look back, there's like a lot of really bad puns about this man's hat.
Classic.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of my foray into the Emerald, and it was just such a wild time. There was so much going on. I felt like I was really part of something bigger than me
Hmm.
that I got swept up in and felt like, I wanted I wanted to succeed. I wanted everybody around me to succeed. I wanted the newspaper to succeed. I wanted the business to succeed. I wanted just the entire model of, what I thought daily journalism should be, to succeed, which is funny because 3 years later, we made a massive shift, when Ryan decided to take us through the revolution, which I think was um, not only super forward thinking, but um, something that not a lot of student newspapers were thinking about doing. You're watching professionals in the journalism world kind of struggle and not be able to figure out what's the right model or how to you know build a product that's going to not only deliver great journalism but also sell ad space and keep you afloat. So I think that was a super prescient move um, at the time, and continues to be kind of a bit of a model for what, you know, good student journalism can be and can grow into, and how it's evolved since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like there's a lot of turbulence going on in the years that you were there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was also a fun time. So just to keep going, I guess
Yeah.
after my I did higher education and in my sophomore year as well, and there was a ton going on with the athletic department. And the university senate was all up in arms because there was no money for anything, and yet the athletic department was sitting on all this reserve, and they were making millions and millions of dollars a year. And they're like, this the whole point of the football team being here is that it's attached to a university, and like, why is the university not getting any of this money?
Yeah. It
You
sounds
know.
like in a lot of ways, the Emerald kind of like prepared you for, jumping into your career right off the bat.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Much was going on. Is there any like instance you remember specifically that's like, now looking back on it is like, oh, this is very reflective of, what a real career in journalism looks like?
Yeah, definitely. um I think some of the long nights trying to put a paper to bed, knowing that like this deadline's creeping up, and you're like, I can't just walk away. Like, I have to finish this. No matter how hard I have to work this next like hour, 45 minutes, 20 minutes, like who knows like what deadline you're trying to beat. Um, to get a story in, to get, a story laid into a design or things like that. Obviously, the further on I went in the Emerald, it came to be we were doing a lot more planning. It wasn't stories coming in at the last minute, trying to get them into the paper, and it was a lot more focus of getting them online as fast as you could, and that is also reflective of some of the mentality you need to have to be um, relevant, and to keep your audience satiated in this business, especially when you're in a market with multiple outlets.
Mhm.
And I think that was, if being a student journalist in Eugene and like battling with the register guard to get a story out, that was really exciting, because I had interned at the guard as well, and that was back when they had like a lot of reporters. So they
Yeah.
had a lot of staff doing a lot of different stories. I remember the higher education reporter was Diane Dietz, and she was really good. But there was
Mhm.
occasions where we would beat her, and I would feel super stoked. And then so like thinking like into the future in my career, when I worked for OPB, I was covering the State House, and that was, there's like the Oregonian, OPB, the Portland Tribune, Salem Reporter, um, all the TV news stations, of course, dropping in when something interesting happens. Uh, uh, you can tell I'm a little bitter there. That was also kind of the same vibe. You're having to make sure that you're getting the fastest, most accurate story out,
Mhm.
so that you're owning the news cycle, and becoming the most trusted source for people, to understand some of the most important issues taking place in the state. So that was absolutely, there's a direct correlation there between what the Emerald prepared me for, not only what the Emerald prepared me for, but what you do at the Emerald. Not just, it's not playtime, it was the real deal. It's a lot of times. Um, and giving you that sense of urgency, giving you that sense of professionalism that you are, and being treated like a true professional when you go out into the world, because when you pick up the phone as a Emerald reporter or whoever, as an editor, you're calling to check a fact or something like that. People answer, and they respect that because they know the good work that the Emerald does.
Yeah, absolutely. The name associated with it, for sure. And I'm sure being there during the transition from, or the revolution, as you called it, from strictly print to understanding the digital world and things like that was a lot of, you know, a big switch up and a lot of preparation for what it would be like in the years to come after
You know,
college.
funnily enough, that was so far ahead of um in some ways, Portland Monthly right now is just kind of having its digital revolution, which is
Gotcha.
a little bit mind blowing. Like, we put out a very beautiful print magazine, um, and it looks great on a coffee table. People love to have it. It's just a beautiful product. Um, but we're trying to do better at putting articles online first, not like waiting, you know and kind of trying to backfill the magazine with the best content from the online, from the digital, basically, and taking those and either making them longer or better or cutting them to fit to print or things like that. You never know. But kind of thinking more so about the digital than the print, which is funny because this 10 years later and I'm in my professional career, and they're kind of just starting to think about that. Whereas, at the Emerald, we were creating a beautiful, beautiful print product that um, informed the campus community about everything that they needed to know, while also ensuring that we were 24/7 online and owning the biggest stories that the campus community needed to know about, as it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And then would you mind like telling me a little bit about like how you went from the Emerald to now your current position at Portland Monthly and like
Yeah, definitely.
stops you had?
Um, After I worked at Willamette Week, everything I applied for, because of where, just that the clout of working at Willamette Week, a lot of the things that I applied for, I was able to secure. So I went and between junior and sophomore year, I worked at Willamette Week. Between junior and senior year, I worked at the Register Guard, as a Snowden. Um, and which was really fun because the video Snowden at the time was also at the Register Guard, and one of my very, very good friends, Tommy Pittenger, who was the video editor at the Emerald, we got to work together like all summer. We got to cover a bunch of stuff, and Alicia Jusevic as well, who worked in the ad office. So it was like the three of us. We were really good friends and remain friends to this day. That's the thing about the Emerald. You'll meet people and you'll be friends with them literally the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was at a wedding recently that they had met because of the Emerald,
Mm-hmm.
which was really fun, to kind of bring up and tell people and remind people. I was like, this is because of the Emerald. Um, so after college, um, I took I ended up going to do News 21 at Arizona State, which was a really, really fun opportunity. It's a huge newsroom, and there's like the editors there are great, Jackie Petchel, and at the time Len Downey was working there, and Peter Badia, but he ended up leaving. But Jackie Petchel, amazing woman, great program down there. Um, and I learned a lot about myself as a reporter and kind of where I needed to improve through that process. And then in 2015, I ended up moving out to Indiana to work at the Du Bois County Herald. It's a small community newspaper in a town of about 15, 16,000. Pretty sleepy place, but it was a great place to, kind of cut my teeth as a younger reporter, covering a lot of different things from city hall and county government to, the 4-H fair, or, local festivals and things like that, kind of flavor of the week type stories, and profiles about local veterans or people who had, gone off and done cool things and then come back to the county. So it was a really interesting place to be. I met my wife out there, which was, obviously a huge part of my life. In 27, so after about a year and almost 2 years out there, I came back to Portland. Was just kind of missing home. I had seen the Midwest, and seen a lot of other parts of the country, and realized I was like, yeah, I think that Oregon is where I want to be. And so I just decided that I wanted to be at home, and that I think that that's where I wanted to make my career. So I came back to Portland in 2017, decided to kind of take some time to figure out what I wanted to do and wait for some jobs to open up. So for 6 months, I was just like delivering pizzas, like hanging out, still living with my parents, like I was only like 24 at the time, so it didn't feel like I was, you know, like way behind or anything, because it was just a fun time to be uh a little free of journalism for a second. And actually I've done that a few times in my career where I've like taken a step back and been like, all right, I need to kind of reassess like where I'm at and if I really want to continue to do this. I've done that a couple times, and I've always decided to come back, and we'll see if that continues to be
Yeah.
the case. Um, so after about 6 months of kind of figuring out what I wanted to do and kind of taking a break and just like resting my brain, I ended up securing a job as a features writer reporter at the Lake Oswego Review. Another My editor there was Gary Stein. He was a at the Oregonian as well with Ryan Frank. So when he saw Ryan on my resume, he was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to give Ryan a call." There's a lot of times where it's been the names you have,
Mhm.
or the people who have worked with other people from the Emerald, um, end up getting you the foot in the door, and then you get to allow your skills and your personality to shine, uh, and get you the job. But a lot of times that first initial kind of breaking of the ice is because of somebody and somebody that through the Emerald a lot of times, which has been a really, I think, beneficial thing in my career, just to know so many people from the Emerald and so many people from um, both years after and before me, and alumni from decades before,
Mhm.
that have been just such a help to me in my career.
Yeah.
Um, from that features reporter job, I ended up getting a city hall job with the same company, with Pamplin Media, and I was there for a couple years. Then I was applied to become their Capitol reporter, the State House reporter, and was able given the shot to go down to Salem, which was kind of my dream job at the time, to be covering the biggest stories in the state.
Mhm.
Um, so that was really fun. Ended up going coming back to Portland for a year during COVID, because they just kind of had shut down the Capitol Bureau pretty much,
Right.
uh, because they just didn't have the resources for it. So I was then covering Clackamas County, which was a really fun beat up here, because there was just always something insane happening. I think county government is actually covering county government is one of the funnest jobs you can have, because like the function of the county is a very interesting like form of government. Like they're not the police, they're not the
Mhm.
um they don't like.
Legislature by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um it's just a really really fun place to cover government. But after a while, I was like, okay, I really want to go back to the Capitol. So I applied for a job at OPB. That was a temporary position. They had a reporter who was out for 6 months on maternity leave, and I was able to get my foot in the door there and work with another Ryan Frank friend, Anna Griffin. Um, Gosh, I owe my whole career to Ryan
Yeah.
Frank. um, and had a great time at OPB. OPB is an incredible organization. They treat their employees really well. They do awesome work, and just have a really great culture,
Mhm.
um, which was kind of refreshing, coming from a lot of like newspapers or places like that, where it was like a slog, and you weren't sure if you're going to have a job the next week, or things like that. And after about a year and a half at OPB, ended up taking another 6 month break to work as a whitewater guide, which was really fun last summer, ahead of my son being born, um, in October of last year, which has been a wild ride and super fun. And I'm so glad to be a parent now. It's really really a fun. Uh, it's just super rewarding, I think.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm not someone who was like really, really wanted kids. I think
right.
that it was like, but having them, I'm like, wow, I can't imagine life without him. Um, and then in October, started this position with Portland Monthly, and I'm getting to travel all over the state, see a lot of really cool things, experience a lot of things I probably wouldn't be able to afford otherwise.
Mhm.
So really grateful for the opportunity to get to write about you know, ski resorts and really nice hotels at the Oregon coast, or whitewater rafting and paddleboarding and fly fishing, and really things that I really love and enjoy to do, golf. Um, so that's kind of been an interesting twist in my career, is to get to marry my passion for the outdoors and for traveling with my love for writing about it and for informing people.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then also, combined with that, coming home to Portland, do you feel like there's like a sense of being able to give back to your community at all now that you're, back in the place you grew up and doing this reporting?
Yeah, definitely. I will say that, as the travel and outdoors editor, there are times where I'm like, maybe this story isn't the most fulfilling, or it's like not uh
Hitting
Hey,
necessarily.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like hard hitting. But at the same time, I think that there is a huge need, especially kind of when things are crazy in the political scene or things like that. And I mean, with all the problems that Portland has, which I think are massively overblown. Obviously, every city has its problems, but we love the national media loves to treat us as their punching bag. So to show kind of the softer side of the city, the cool things or the cool things about Oregon, that will always remain true. It's beautiful places and things to do. I think is a really there's a time and a place, and it's needed. I think I owe a lot to the Emerald. It's
Mhm.
my entire career has been based off of the connections I made, the skills I built, the mistakes I made,
Yeah.
the ability to kind of take a step back and see where I needed to improve, from the work that I was doing there, and improve myself as a person, really. In a lot of instances, you do a lot of growing at the Emerald, because it gives you the freedom to make those mistakes and kind of learn from them. And I think that that's one of the most valuable parts of the Emerald, is the independence you have to do the job, to be the journalist that you want to be. And if you need to improve, there's people there who are there to help you. And people, older student journalists who have been there, done that, and also want to see you succeed, because it means you're building this network of friends and professional connections that you'll have for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.